hospital gown draped over what looked like a person crouched low, arms hugging their knees. The face was featureless, stretched smooth like fabric pulled over a mask. There was movement. A pale shape shifted in the dark. I could hear something beneath me. My bedroom was right above the basement, and I could hear movement. Slow, steady footsteps on the concrete. That night, I woke up around 3 a.m. with the distinct sensation that someone was outside my bedroom window. Hey, hello, welcome back to ASMRk. I hope you're doing well, as always. Today's video is another compilation of scary Reddit stories. There is 5 in total. All of them will be whispered. Let's get straight to the first one. I hope you enjoy. I used to work overnight security at a large regional hospital. One of those outdated buildings with layers of renovations stacked over decades. I was stationed in the central monitoring office, and my rounds took me across every wing. Most of the time, nights were uneventful. Quiet corridors, nurses nodding off at their stations, the occasional emergency room scuffle. One shift, just after 2:30 a.m, I got a call on the internal phone. It was a nurse from the 5th floor. She said something simple. "Can you check floor 6? There's movement on the monitor, but nobody should be in there." That sentence alone wouldn't have been odd, except our hospital didn't have a 6th floor anymore. There used to be, decades back, but it had been shut down and sealed after the cardiac wing moved to a newer facility across town. I hesitated, then chalked it up to a camera glitch. But the nurse's voice had sounded off, like she was nervous to even make the call. Policy was policy. I grabbed my flashlight and headed for the service elevator, the only way to get up there. The elevator creaked as it went up. When the doors opened, the air was immediately different, stale and frigid. The motion sensor lights barely worked, leaving most of the corridor shrouded in dark patches. The linoleum floor was cracked and warped from years of neglect. I stepped out, heart already beating a little faster than I wanted to admit. As I walked the corridor, I noticed the old patient name cards still stuck outside the rooms, yellowed and curling. Dust coated every surface, and old equipment sat rusted in the corners. I turned to head back when I heard it, a soft, rhythmic knocking. 3 knocks, pause, 3 more knocks, coming from one of the patient rooms at the far end. Logic told me it could be an old pipe or vibration from the boiler room, but the knocks were too deliberate. I opened the first few doors I passed, empty, just decayed furniture and peeling paint. But the knocking continued, a few doors ahead, always moving, like something was waiting. I reached room 612, where the sound had originated, and hesitated before grabbing the handle. The metal was ice cold. I pushed the door open slowly, shining my light inside. It was pitch black, except for a single movement. Something too low to be a person standing. I stepped in, flashlight trembling in my grip. That's when I saw it. A hospital gown draped over what looked like a person crouched low, arms hugging their knees, facing the wall. My brain scrambled to rationalise it. No patients, no staff. Nobody had been assigned here in over a decade. I said, "Mom, are you okay?" No response. Just that awful sound of shallow breathing, fast and ragged. I was backing toward the door when the figure suddenly jerked, first twisting, then shifting to an unnatural angle, like the joints didn't work right. I bailed. I didn't look back. I ran, almost tripping over debris in the hallway, jabbing at the elevator call button until the doors slid open. Back at the security office, I radioed the on-call supervisor and logged everything, and even showed them the still image captured on the old 6th floor camera. There was a figure in room 612's doorway, a gown, slumped posture, head cocked sideways. Facilities sent someone up that morning, found the door to 612 broken open from the inside. Dust disturbed all over the floor, and old plastic IV bags torn open. The following week, the hospital shut down the 6th floor completely, welded the door shut, cut the power lines, and pretended it was just an outdated infrastructure. I worked there for 2 more months before I quit. I never went up there again. Every so often, people still mention getting patient monitor pings from non-existent room 612, always after 2 a.m. I grew up in a mid-sized industrial town, the kind built around factories that mostly shut down before I was even born. There was this old steel foundry on the outskirts, surrounded by fenced-off land that nobody really paid attention to anymore. Behind it was this huge field, overgrown grass, a few scattered trees, and what looked like the remnants of old equipment half buried in dirt. In high school, we'd sometimes take a shortcut through it to get to the strip mall on the other side. It was technically trespassing, but nobody cared. Security had been non-existent since the 90s. About 6 months ago, when I was back home visiting my mum, I decided to walk through it again for old time's sake. I remembered it as being sketchy, but harmless. But something had changed. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. Normally, you could at least hear traffic or distant trains, but the whole area felt muffled, like sound wasn't travelling right. The old fence around the field was mostly intact, but sections had fallen in. I climbed through like we used to and headed across the field, following the old dirt path that cut straight through the middle. About halfway in, I realised the path didn't look the same anymore. There were deep tracks, almost like something heavy had been dragged through, crushing the grass in long, irregular streaks. I stopped to listen, feeling that nervous tension you get when something feels off. My phone had no signal, which wasn't unusual, but it made the whole thing feel more isolated. I decided to move quicker, just cut through and get to the other side. That's when I saw the figure. It stood near the edge of the tree line, facing me directly. From the distance, it looked like a man, but something about the posture was strange. It was too rigid, and his arms pinned straight to the sides. I called out, just a quick, "Hey," like a reflex, 30 or 40 feet away, I could make out details. It wasn't a person. It was a mannequin. At least, that's what I thought at first. It had human proportions, but no features. The skin, if you could call it that, looks like damp, wrinkled cloth wrapped tightly around bone-thin limbs. The face was featureless, stretched smooth like fabric pulled over a mask. It was wedged into the ground, standing upright like someone had planted it there. I backed up slowly, my brain trying to make sense of it. It had no place being there. There were no buildings nearby, no reason for someone to put a thing like that in the middle of nowhere. Then I heard it, a heavy, dragging sound. Long, slow, like something massive was being pulled through the grass, closing in from behind me. I spun around. There was another one, closer than the first. Same height, same stretched, cloth-like skin, except this one was swaying slightly, shifting in place. My hat shot up to my throat. I turned back toward the first one. It was gone, completely vanished. No footsteps, no sign of movement, just empty field. The dragging sound picked up again, closer now, uncomfortably close, and I caught a glimpse of something just beyond the tree line, deeper into the field. More of them. 3, 4. They were all standing perfectly still, spaced out at strange intervals. That primal panic kicked in. I bolted, running through the tall grass, nearly rolling my ankle as I cut a wide arc back toward the broken fence. The dragon didn't follow me, but I could feel it, like weight pressing in from every direction. When I got back to the road, I looked back once. The field was empty, totally still, like nothing had even been there. I drove by it a few days later with my mum. She said they'd started clearing that area for development, but the workers had stopped. Something about unstable ground. She mentioned, like it was nothing, that 2 people had gone missing out there years ago when they tried to scrap the old Foundry equipment. I haven't been back since. I live in a small town where most people know each other, but there's one place everyone avoids: Limestone Road. It's a long, narrow stretch on the outskirts of town that barely gets maintained. Overgrown ditches, cracked pavements, and no street lights. Growing up, it was just one of those places people whispered about, mostly dumb stories to scare kids. But there was one detail that always stuck out. Supposedly, there's a house at the very end of Limestone Road, set way back behind the woods, that doesn't show up on any maps. I never believed it. I'd driven down Limestone plenty of times and never seen any driveway or mailbox. That changed last winter. I decided to go jogging one afternoon. The main trail looped near the start of Limestone, and on a whim, I went down it further than I ever have before. And that's when I saw the house. A narrow, gravel driveway, half hidden by collapsed brush, almost completely swallowed by weeds. I'd passed it a dozen times without ever noticing this. It felt like one of those moments where you know you should turn around, but curiosity won. I pushed through the brush and followed the driveway. It stretched farther than I expected, curving deeper into the woods. Every step felt like I was walking away from the world. The air was colder and quieter. After a few minutes, the house appeared. It was huge but falling apart. Tall, sagging beside it. There were no cars, no paths, no signs of anyone living there, but the whole area looked disturbed. The grass around the porch was flattened, like people had been moving through it. I told myself I'd only go as far as the porch, take a quick picture for a friend, and leave. But when I got closer, I noticed something that made me stop dead in my tracks. On the porch, someone had arranged a row of shoes, dozens of them, all mismatched, caked in dirt, men's, women's and kids' shoes, all pointed toward the front door. I should have turned back, I know that, but I wanted to understand what the hell I was looking at. I went up to the porch and crouched near the shoes. The weirdest thing was how fresh some of them looked. There was a pair of sneakers with nearly clean soles, like they'd been placed there recently. Then I heard something, movement inside the house. At first I thought it was the wind, but it wasn't. It sounded like footsteps upstairs, slow and deliberate. Then I heard whispering, not loud, not aggressive, just quiet, constant murmurs, like several people were inside having a conversation. I was frozen. Every instinct screamed to leave, but I couldn't make my legs move. Then the front door creaked, not fully open, just enough for me to see a sliver of the hallway. It was completely dark inside, except there was movement. A pale shape shifted in the dark, just beyond the doorframe, followed by the faintest sound of breathing. I stepped back, trying not to make noise, but the porch boards groaned under my foot, and the breathing inside stopped. I turned and sprinted back down the driveway, no hesitation. I didn't look back once, but I could hear it, fast footsteps behind me, matching mine, but impossibly light, like bare feet slapping against wood and dirt. Halfway back, the whispering started again, louder this time. It wasn't anger, it was calling out, like pleading. When I got to the brush, I pushed through, heart slamming in my chest, and I ran straight for the road. Only when I got back on the cracked pavement did the sound stop. Everything went completely silent again. I didn't tell anyone right away. I felt stupid, like maybe I just scared myself. But a few nights later, I drove past Limestone with my friend Sam. I didn't mention anything, we were just passing through. But Sam suddenly slowed down. Right where the driveway was hidden, there was a pair of shoes sitting in the ditch, just sitting there, perfectly placed, pointed toward the woods. I haven't gone back, and I don't run that direction anymore. Some places, you just shouldn't push your luck. Hey, sorry to interrupt the stories. They will continue shortly. This is just a quick message. If you are enjoying the stories, please do consider subscribing for more. There'll be 2 new videos every week containing scary stories, all whispered. Anyway, let's get back to these stories. This happened when I was 29, living in my childhood home after my dad had passed away. It was one of those older houses with weird add-ons, tiny hallways that made no sense, doors that didn't seem to go anywhere. One of them was in the basement. It was tucked behind the boiler, half covered by insulation and old wood panels. My dad had always just told me it was a crawl space. I never really thought about it growing up, basement was just for laundry and storage. But after he passed, I had to start clearing things out. It wasn't until I pulled away the panels that I realised it wasn't a crawl space at all. It was a full-sized door, old and heavy, with paint flaking off in chunks. No handle, just a keyhole that looked rusted shut. And in that moment, every hair on my neck stood up. I told myself it was nothing, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. For 2 days, I ignored it. Then, I went back down with a flashlight. I tried pushing it, pulling it, even tapping it. It wouldn't budge. Then, I remembered the little drawer in my dad's workbench, where he kept random old keys. I dug through it and found a huge iron key I'd never seen before. When I turned it in the lock, I swear the whole door shifted like it hadn't been open in decades. It didn't open into a room. It opened to a stairwell that went down farther than the foundations should have allowed. Cold air hit me in the face, stale, damp, like wet concrete. I shined my light down the stairs, but the beam just vanished into the darkness. I told myself I'd just look for a second, just to see how far down it went. I made it 3 steps down before I heard it. Movement way below me, like something dragging across stone. I backed up and slammed the door shut, locked it again, and walked away. I told myself I was imagining it. That night I barely slept. I kept thinking about the door, about how it had been locked and hidden for God knows how long. The next day, I avoided the basement, but around 2 a.m, I woke up freezing. I could hear something beneath me. My bedroom was right above the basement, and I could hear movement, slow, steady footsteps on the concrete. I grabbed my flashlight and stood at the top of the basement stairs. The house was silent, but the air felt colder than it should have been. Then I heard it. 3 slow knocks from behind the basement door. Not the door at the top of the stairs, no, the hidden one behind the boiler. I slammed my bedroom door, sat in the corner with the bat, and waited for the morning. The next day, I tried to rationalise it. Old pipes, shifting wood, whatever. I almost convinced myself. But when I went down to throw in a load of laundry, the air felt wrong, heavy. I walked past the boiler, and the door was slightly open. The key was still in the lock, but it wasn't turned. My flashlight flickered as I leaned over to shut it, and just before I did, I swear I saw something at the bottom of the step. A wet, bare footprint, human-sized, pointed up toward me. That was it. I called my cousin and asked her if she'd come and stay. Before we went to sleep, I shoved a heavy cabinet in front of the door and locked the basement. Around 4 a.m, my cousin shook me awake. "Do you have a basement window?" I told her no. "Then why," she asked, "was there knocking coming from the vents?" I left the next morning and haven't been back since. I used to walk home from my night shift at the gas station through an empty stretch of road flanked by overgrown fields. It was quicker than sticking to the main roads, and after 3 years of taking it, I'd grown used to the dark, the silence, and even the cold rustle of tall grass that reached up to my waist in spring. That night in late October, I got off a little late than usual. The new hire didn't show, so I stayed a couple of hours until the manager could come in. The shortcut was darker than usual, no moon out, and a thick fog had crept in low along the ground. Still, I wasn't nervous. I was just tired. visible in front of me. About halfway through the walk, there's a rusted wire fence separating the road from an old field. Nobody farms it anymore. It just sits there, waist-high grass and a couple of dead trees. I never saw anything move in it, not even deer. But that night, as I passed it, I noticed a figure. He was standing just inside the fence line. At first, I thought it was a scarecrow. Same posture, arms hanging slack, a tilt to the body. I even slowed down and squinted, expecting to see a pole sticking out of the back of him. But he was too clean, too modern. Jeans, jacket, maybe late 40s. He was staring right at me. I stopped. He didn't move, didn't flinch or nod, or even shift weight from one leg to another. I gave a small, awkward wave. Hey man, you good? He didn't answer. He just kept staring. I started walking again, a little faster now. I glanced back just before I reached the curve. He was still standing there, head turned slightly, following me. I told myself the next morning it was nothing, some weirdo, maybe drunk, maybe a guy looking for his dog or something. I didn't like it, but I didn't report it either. What would I even say? There was a man standing in a field and he looked too still. 2 nights later, I was walking home again. Same route, same chill in the air. I didn't want to admit it, but I was watching the field now, watching the fence. And he was back. Same spot, same clothes, same posture. But this time, he was closer to the fence. It felt wrong. He wasn't walking toward me. He hadn't moved while I was watching. But I could feel it. He was nearer than before. He was still staring too, except this time, his head was tilted slightly the other way, like it was trying to understand something about me, as if I had done something wrong, and he just hadn't figured out what yet. I kept walking. I didn't wave, didn't speak. I looked straight ahead and tried not to speed up too obviously. The sound of my footsteps felt unbearably loud. When I got home, I locked the door. I hadn't done that in months. That night, I woke up around 3 a.m. with the distinct sensation that someone was outside my bedroom window. My apartment's on the 2nd floor. I stopped taking the shortcut for a few days and took the long way. Added 20 minutes to my walk, but I didn't care. But it didn't matter. He showed up again, this time 2 blocks from my place, just standing on the sidewalk, still as ever, lit by a flickering street lamp. I turned right around and went back to the gas station and called a taxi. That became a habit, walking somewhere, seeing him, turning around. I started thinking maybe I'd hallucinated it. Stress, too much caffeine, not enough sleep. But the details were always too specific. The way he stood, the way he leaned, always staring, always closer. One night, I asked the driver to wait outside while I walked up to my building. I didn't see the man, no one did. But as I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the motion sensor porch light clicked on. I turned around. The driver was gone, but he was there, behind the bushes, no longer standing straight, crouched, like he was waiting. I stopped going to work. I called in sick. My boss wasn't happy, but I didn't care. I stayed inside with the windows closed and the blinds drawn. I slept during the day and stayed up all night, keeping every light on. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then I made a mistake. I ordered food. The driver texted me that he was outside, so I cracked the door and looked out through the screen. There was a bag on the porch, and him, standing halfway down the sidewalk. He didn't come closer, but he was smiling. It wasn't wide or cartoonish or twisted, just a regular smile. That made it worse, like he knew something I didn't, like he'd already won. I haven't left since, not even for groceries. I've been eating dry cereal and peanut butter. I don't open the door, I don't go near the windows. I don't know how long I can stay like this. Last night, I heard scratching on the outside of the wall near the living room. Not the window, the wall. Second floor, there's no balcony. I don't know what he is, or how he's doing it, but I know one thing. He's not waiting anymore. He's moving in, closer. So that concludes the stories for today. I hope you enjoyed them. Until next time, take care.